A Passion for Mushrooms by Chronological. Chapter 14. Those That Carry On. Upon returning to Erebor, Bilbo and Dis were greeted with fanfare and celebration, the likes of which could hardly be believed. Meat feasting, music, and elaborate displays of welcome could be found everywhere. Dis was hailed by all as the one who had led the exiles in the Blue Mountains during Thorin's long absence. Meanwhile, Bilbo was very happily welcomed home by all of his friends. Apparently, Dis had not been exaggerating how much they worried for him. Everyone crowded around him at dinner to ask him silly questions and tease him for his earlier confusion. There were any number of jokes about soft-headed hobbits, and every single member of the company found a reason over the course of the night to very gently press their foreheads to his own. Bilbo thought it was half display that his friends were demonstrating the proper way to touch heads with a hobbit, but it was also clearly a heartfelt gesture. Even better than all of the celebration was the chance to meet the families of his friends. Gloin's wife was as beautiful as promised, and his son Gimli was just as clever as his father. Bombur's numerous children were all delightful little dwarves, and his wife was a plump, jolly woman who had a mastery in the Artisans' Guild with Beaufort. Bilbo found a willing audience for his stories among the children, and happily joined their little dances. What's more, Nori's wife Sani proved a delightful surprise. Sneaky as her husband, she tried to burgle from the burglar and quite succeeded in taking his coin purse. After huffing indignantly, Bilbo paid her back by lifting a small brooch from the front of her dress when her husband had her thoroughly distracted, and they became fast friends. There could be no question that what Bilbo missed most of all during his week recuperating in Dale was breakfasting with Thorin, though, and he was pleased to resume the custom on his first morning back inside the mountain. If the conversation was a little stilted, Bilbo blamed it on Thorin's concern for his injuries, and did not think much of it.
"But Dis spoke to me at length last night,"
the king said, apparently paying very close attention to the amount and thickness of the butter he was spreading on his muffin.
"I'm glad," Bilbo said. "She missed you all terribly while we were in Dale, only an hour away. I feel very guilty for keeping it to myself, but of course she would not hear a word about returning to the mountain while I was anything less than fully recovered."
"No," Thorin agreed, still buttering his muffin.
"I imagine she would not, as a matter of honor. She did mention that you spoke often while convalescing."
"Oh, yes, I don't mean to say I'm not grateful. My head hurt far too much for reading, and I should have been bored to tears without her."
"Yes."
Thorin was still spreading the butter on his muffin, though Bilbo did not see how it could possibly get any smoother than it was. Dwarven perfectionism was often quite beyond the hobbit's sensibilities.
"She mentioned in passing that the topic of courting gifts came up."
"Indeed it did. Is it true that you made that lovely mithril ring she wears? It's very beautiful." Finally, putting his butter knife down, Thorin looked up at Bilbo to smile.
"Really designed his courting gift for Dis, as is proper."
"Yes, she said you wouldn't admit to it. Still, I had no idea you could craft something so beautiful. I mean," he added very quickly, "I knew you were a master smith. I just thought that meant you made swords and things. Not that the swords you make aren't very beautiful, I'm sure. Oh dear." If anything, Bilbo's babbling only made Thorin's smile broader. At least he did not seem overly offended.
"I am glad she thought to tell you of our ways in this."
Thorin's voice was warm, and his eyes were very soft indeed. The return of his sister to their true home obviously made him happy, and that filled Bilbo's heart with joy for them both. "As am I! It seems every time I turn around there is something new to learn about Dwarven customs. Do you know I had seriously considered throwing myself a birthday party in the hobbit fashion come September? Imagine me giving presents to everyone and offending all of my guests."
"Hobbits give gifts so freely."
"Of course. Hobbits love getting presents, and the best way to go about it is to make plenty of excuses to give them."
"I would never have guessed."
Like a flash, Bilbo realized why the king had been so stiff about broaching this particular subject. Immediately he said, "I never apologized, did I? I am so terribly sorry for refusing all of those rewards you were trying to give me. Please believe that if I had any idea it embarrassed you, I would have been more circumspect. Truly, I did not understand." Turning back to his breakfast, Thorin kindly said,
"Think nothing of it. We should not have assumed that you would, nor judged your actions by our standards. Dis mentioned that among your people, Such items as I offered would have been an indication that you ought to leave Erebor. Not that we have great crates of jewels lying about in the Shire, but that is how it seemed to me." "Then I am glad you refused them," Thorin said forcefully.
Bilbo was so pleased to hear it that he could say nothing at all in response. Instead, he ate a little ham and tried not to blush. Of course, Thorin wanted him to stay in Erebor. The king had said as much before. It wasn't news. Getting Twitter-painted by having the sentiment repeated was ridiculous. If Dis had not been so busy with her own affairs, Bilbo might have sought her out for advice on her brother's strange behavior over the next week. Letting his chair at the dinner table sit empty, the king only ever appeared at breakfast in his own rooms. Even then, he often seemed exhausted, as though he had not slept at all, and was merely stopping by for a bath or a change of clothes. He smiled much more than was usual, but he spoke little. Bilbo was worried. However, as Thorin was still eating whatever Bilbo put in front of him for breakfast, Bilbo did not disturb Dis or Balin about the matter. Thorin's business was his own. Besides, Balin would just badger Bilbo about attending dreadfully dumb meetings of lords, and Dis had other concerns. As it turned out, Dis was very concerned about her younger son's relationship with one of the oath-breaking, tree-fucking, leaf-eating elves that had left her and her people to starve, wandering the wilderness as soon as Erebor could no longer pay for a friendly alliance. Aside from the occasional mention that Tauriel was a very brave warrior who had definitely saved Kili's life, Bilbo tried to stay out of what was obviously a family affair. It wasn't his business. He had mushrooms to grow, an apprentice to feed, and he really didn't understand why the enmity between elves and dwarves could not be left in the past. Things between Dis and Tauriel were always worst at dinner, and perhaps that was why Thorin had been giving the meal a miss. Dis would speak loudly about how wonderful it was that the bounty of Erebor could be open enough and charitable enough to feed even an elf. She would hold forth truly appalling opinions about Tauriel's person, bearing, sense of dress, ability, character, desires, and motivations. Bearing all of this stoically, Tauriel ate her meals unflinchingly and did not respond. Whenever Bilbo tried to speak up for Tauriel, Dis praised his kindness before railing about how little Tauriel deserved it. It was even worse when Kili endeavored to do the same. One night, after some particularly vicious insults, Kili caught Tauriel by the hand, gave it a gentle squeeze, and promised that things would not be like this forever. This was the sort of gesture that Thorin often pretended he could not see, though it was also the reason he had forbidden the young lovers to sit next to one another at table. Dis did not pretend to ignore it. Turning like a viper, she moved to slap Kili furiously across his cheek. Lightning-quick, Tauriel caught the hand. For the first time in days, she met the princess's eyes. "You may strike me, if you like," the elf said in an even tone that nevertheless conveyed a wealth of emotion. "Nay, I," Dis roared, "yet you do not have permission to lay hands upon my person. I am a princess of the house of Thorin. You are elfish filth." Releasing the Dwarf's hand, Tauriel broke eye contact. Folding her hands behind her back and looking straight ahead like the soldier she was, the elf said placidly, "Then you may have me flogged for the affront." "You do not tell me what may and may not be," Dis howled. She looked as mad as Thorin ever had in the grip of his gold lust, and it was not a family resemblance that cheered Bilbo at all. "I will not have you whipped. I will have your head." The princess then barked something in Khuzdul that Bilbo could not translate. Kili went as pale as he had when struck by a Morgul shaft. Fili and the other dwarves standing around Dis gasped. In contrast, Tauriel simply inclined her head, meeting Dis's eyes once more. "I accept," she said. "No!" Kili cried, grasping Tauriel's arm desperately. "No, she does not accept." Calmly, rationally, Fili put a hand on his mother's shoulder. "Do not do this, please!" Without paying the least attention to the princes, the two women turned from each other and left the hall. Kili followed Tauriel, clutching at her coattails and pleading with her to change her mind. Most of the rest of the company went with Dis. Bilbo could hear Fili asking his mother to rescind her words in his gentle, reasonable way. It was Balin sinking back down into a seat at the dinner table, as though his old bones could not take the weight of such a life, who explained it all to Bilbo. Apparently, they were going to fight to the death. At breakfast the following morning, Thorin was serious, and focused. Which was very good, as Bilbo intended for him to put a stop to all of this fighting to the death nonsense. Unfortunately, Thorin was not as cooperative as he ought to have been.
What good is being a king if you cannot prevent people
Killing one another.
It is a challenge of honor. I cannot forbid it, and I do not believe you would want me to stop it,
Thorin said gruffly, stabbing his knife through the papers, and Crab rolled gently around roast beef and mushrooms.
Yes,
Bilbo said firmly.
I rather do want you to stop it.
Tauriel laid hands upon my sister. All saw it. If Dis claims it as a personal affront instead of an insult to Erebor, I cannot prohibit her taking personal retribution. I could exile Tauriel to save her life, but Kili would go with her. We would never see him again.
He will never forgive any of you if Dis kills her.
Dis will not win,
Thorin said.
She is a master with the axe, but it has been too long since she last fought a serious opponent. I like this thin bread you have made. It has a pleasing texture.
Thank you. I'm glad you enjoy it. I will make you crepes every day for a month if you put a stop to this fight, though I would not think you, of all people, would need incentive to stop an elf from killing your own sister.
Thorin sighed.
Tauriel will not kill Dis. If she does, she will have to kill me next. But I do not think that threat necessary. Kili would not forgive even his one for murdering his mother.
If neither of them are going to kill the other, then why are they fighting to the death?
Bilbo asked snidely.
Oh, I have no doubt that Dis intends to kill Tauriel if she can. Please, my burglar, try to understand. Dis was not even of age when the dragon came. When we made our long trek, burned and bleeding, to any place that we might call safety, the elves of Muckwood turned us away. She, a child, witnessed that. Many died of burns that might have been saved with poultices from that forest. Those who died of hunger were fewer, for Dermot's folk are a hardy people, but that is worse. Even a little relief from those thrice-damned elves might have saved them, even a crust or a bone to gnaw like a dog. But there was nothing. It was long ago by the count of your people, and Tauriel was young, is still young by the count of hers, but this cannot forget it. I cannot forget it.
Not knowing what to say, Bilbo put some of his own breakfast into his mouth. It tasted like ashes.
She saved Kili's life, he said finally, 4 times.
Yes,
Thorin agreed.
It is in part thanks to her that Erebor is strong once more, that the line of Thorin is secure. So I have allowed her into the mountain, but that is as far as my gratitude extends. She must make her own peace with Dis. She must prove herself still further if she wishes to marry into my house.
A fight to the death seems like a very poor beginning to me, Bilbo said.
Does it? Tauriel has much to gain if she holds Dis's life in her hands and then publicly returns it.